Hi everyone, and thanks for checking out this video review. So today I'll be continuing with my current horror franchise series, which is the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I reviewed the first film the other day. It should be up on my channel. So today we're up to the second film in the series, and that, of course, is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge from 1985. So yeah, I'll just kind of go through the setup and premise of this movie, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will contain spoilers. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, is a 1985 American supernatural slasher film, this time directed by Jack Shoulder and written by David Chaskin. It stars Mark Patton, Kim Myers, Robert Englund, and Robert Russler. It is the second installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The film follows Jesse Walsh, a teenager who begins having recurring nightmares about Freddy Krueger after moving into the former house of Nancy Thompson from the first film. So basically, 5 years after Freddy Krueger's apparent defeat, the Walshes have moved into Nancy Thompson's former home. Their teenage son Jesse has a nightmare about being stalked by Freddy Krueger driving a school bus. He wakes up and attributes the dream to the unusual heat in the room. Jesse goes to school with his friend Lisa, whom he is interested in romantically but is too shy to flirt with her. After getting into a fight with a boy named Grady during gym class, Coach Schneider has them stay after class and they become friends. Lisa comes to visit Jesse after school and they discover Nancy Thompson's diary, detailing her nightmares, which are strikingly similar to Jesse's. Small fires happen around the house, which culminates in the spontaneous combustion of their pet birds. Jesse's father accuses him of sabotage. So that's basically how the movie starts and sort of the premise of it. In this movie, we have a male lead instead of a female lead, like it was Nancy in the first movie. In this movie, it's Jesse Walsh, who's played pretty well, I'd say, by Mark Patton. Kim Myers plays Lisa Weber, his sort of love interest and friend. Robert Englund, of course, is Freddy Krueger and the bus driver. We actually see Robert Englund outside of the Freddy makeup, which you do a couple of times in this series. This is the first time, though. That was kind of cool. Robert Russler plays Ron Grady. Clu Gallagher plays Ken Walsh's dad, and Marshall Bell plays Coach Schneider. So yeah, this is definitely a different film than the original. Um, Actually, it's kind of a different film from all the rest of them in the series for the most part. They definitely went in a different direction. There's no involvement by Wes Craven in this movie. They basically rolled this movie out pretty quickly after the success of the first one. I think they rolled it out a year or even less than that after the first movie came out. Because I believe the first movie came out in November of '84, and this one I know came out in '85. I don't know the exact month, but I'll just kind of go through my pros and cons. So the pros are the fact that Freddy's still really scary in this movie. In fact, you could argue he's even scarier than the first movie. I probably wouldn't. I would say that because the first movie had better directing and better atmosphere, I think he was still probably scarier in that movie. But he's definitely dark in this movie, and he's got a great look to him as well. They kind of changed his nose and his eyes in this movie, but it works. He's really creepy looking, very scary. Um, Got to talk about Mark Patton's performance as Jesse. I thought he was the best character in this movie. Obviously, the main character, but from beginning to end, you really believe that this kid is terrified for his life and the life of everybody around him. And Mark Patton really does a good job of bringing that home throughout the movie. The practical effects, for the most part, are good. Especially, it definitely highlighted by the scene where Freddy rips out of Jesse. Um, at Ron's bedroom later in the movie, towards the end of the movie. That's a really effective effect. In fact, I would say that's one of my favorite effects and scenes of any nightmare movie. Um, the movie still has an overall dark atmosphere and tone to it. They haven't gone into the campy silliness yet that we'll get later on. It doesn't ignore the original. It makes several references to Nancy and her diary, as well as what took place across the street with Glenn and him being murdered and stuff. Which I always appreciate it when films don't ignore what came before it, even though this film is different. The opening scene and the ending scene with the school, the two scenes with the school bus involvement, the sort of the bookends of the movie, are really effective. And frankly, my favorite scenes in the movie, the school bus driving out to the burnt out desert with Jesse on the bus, and Yeah, just very effective. The effects in the desert are good. Very creepy scenes, really sets the tone for the movie at the beginning and has a nice sort of wraparound at the end. Really enjoyed those scenes. And overall, this movie is, for what they were going for, it's effective for the most part. And it's very creepy. It's a creepy Freddy movie and a creepy horror movie, I think. So those are my pros for the movie. As far as cons go, it does. There are some. The biggest one is the fact that they break the rules that were set by Wes Craven in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Basically, where Freddy's able to be out in the real world, and that's signified at the pool party towards the middle to the end of the movie, where he does the line where his arms are out. You're all my children now. I know that scene drove Wes Craven nuts. Um, because it's so far against what he was going for with the original movie, and even Robert Englund, I think, had a problem with it. But yeah, they definitely went in a different direction where Freddy, he basically uses Jesse as a human avatar in this movie to kill, as opposed to invading the dreams of Elm Street children or other kids in general in Springwood. It's more of a possession movie. Um, and that's another con, is the fact that he doesn't invade the dreams of any other kids or teenagers in the movie. Not that I didn't think the chemistry was the best between Lisa and Jesse. I mean, I've seen worse, but I've certainly seen better, and it might be because Mark Patton had, though he hadn't come out at the time, was would end up coming out of the closet after this movie as a gay actor. So I don't know how much of that had to do with it, but I didn't really buy it that much. Even though I thought both him and Lisa Meyer, or Kim Myers, who played Lisa, was good in the movie, as far as their characters go. I just didn't think their chemistry was great. The confrontation scene with Freddy at the end at the power plant or the factory, whatever it is, with the boiler room, it isn't really that great. It's not epic or memorable. In fact, I'd say it's kind of forgettable, especially when you throw in the practical effect of the terrible practical effect with the dogs from hell, which are, oh, they're so bad. Um, this movie doesn't really allow Robert Englund, I didn't think, to fully embrace the Freddy character like he has in other movies, be it either from a more comedic standpoint later on with the one liners, or even in the first movie, with just sort of his sadistic sense of humor or over the topness. This movie, he really plays it straight. And even though he plays it dark and scary, I just didn't feel like, I just felt like they left some Robert Englund on the table, I guess, as the character of Freddy in this movie. Even though Robert Englund's fine, he's still great in this movie as Freddy. He is Freddy. He talks more in this movie. I don't think the directing's quite as strong in this movie. I think Jack Shoulder's a good technical director, but um, between his directing style, which was not as strong as Wes Craven's, and the fact he got a story handed to him, which was just kind of out there and different and not as strong as what was written in the first movie, um, those things sort of hampered it. There's really silly and sort of weird moments, storylines in this movie, with the parakeet scene or blowing up in midair after it kind of goes crazy, and the Coach Schneider scene where he makes Jesse run laps in the middle of the night after Jesse sees him at a like an S&M gay bar, I guess. This movie also doesn't have that claustrophobic feeling that the first one did, that Wes Craven did such a good job on really making you feel like you were trapped in this movie almost. This is a little bit more, even though the tone is dark, it's just more of a generic horror movie in that regard, without the claustrophobic feeling. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts, pros and cons. Overall, I have to say this is a movie that I think initially wasn't well received. A lot of people had it as one of their worst, and some people probably still do. But I think over time, it's kind of picked up some traction, and I think people have come to appreciate the darkness of it, the darkness of and scariness of Freddy, and the better aspects of the movie, even though it is really different and it does break rules from the first one. And of course, people will talk about the gay subtext, which isn't really subtext. It's basically in your face. Which to me, I mean, it's there. I can see it, but it's not really a pro or a con for me. It's just kind of whatever. It's a direction that they took. I don't think it adds or takes away from the movie myself. But yeah, it's there. I mean, they have a game called Probe in the closet of his house. So And then, of course, the scene with Grady towards the end after he leaves Lisa's yeah, Lisa's house after making out with her, stops mid makeout and goes to his house and says, "I need to sleep with you tonight." So I mean, yeah, it's there. You know, I guess it's the gayest horror movie of all time according to the polls online. But that's not really part of my review. Like I said, I recognize it. It's there. They tried to deny it, of course, for the first 25 years of this movie. I think it was 2010 where the writer um, David Chaskin, who's the one that wrote the movie, came out and said, "Yeah, it was supposed to be subtext." Which, I mean, they knew what they were doing. There's no way. There was a school of thought. Well, maybe they just didn't recognize it. They recognized it. They knew. They just didn't want to culp to it until several years later. So yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one to rate. It really is. I think I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. There are things I like about it. I like Freddy, the look of him, the darkness of him, the atmosphere and the tone of the movie, the performance of Mark Patton. But again, on the other hand, they break the rules. They don't let Freddy be fully Freddy. It's not as well directed. Um, yeah, it's a very mixed bag. So I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10 on this movie as far as my rating goes. Go ahead and comment down below and like this video, this review video, and subscribe to my channel to see future Nightmare movies. But tell me what you thought about this one. I know it's kind of a polarizing one, I guess is the best way to say it. So go ahead and leave your thoughts on it, of what you think of the movie. So yeah, thanks for checking out this review, um, and have a great day. Thanks. Bye.